I would next like to introduce another lawyer who is a great friend to the civil liberties movement, Faisal Kutty, who is a human rights lawyer and a longtime civil liberties activist in the Greater Toronto Area and well known in this city as a campaigner for justice. Faisal Kutty.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you with the greeting of peace. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for putting together this extremely important event. There's a lot of behind the scenes work, so I would like to thank all those people who've worked extensively to put this together. I think they deserve a hand. I would also like to thank Dennis Edney for his presentation and the other speakers who will be coming after me. But Dennis in particular, because I want to thank you on behalf of myself, and I would take the liberty to thank you on behalf of the Muslim community, because it's people like you who give us hope in humanity, and that the positive work that people do will improve the lot for the rest of us, inshallah. Thirdly, I would like to thank the audience for you coming here on a Tuesday when I think you may have other things to do. You've shown the dedication and the initiative to come and hopefully make a difference. And I will try to share some of the things I think we need to do so that you can go and make a difference. You could have been, for instance, watching Quantum of Solace at a discounted rate today. So I thank you very much for coming here, but I can tell you it wasn't a very good movie. I saw that, so you're not missing much. As a lawyer, I also have a caveat before speaking, and that is, and this is more addressed to CSIS, RCMP, INSET, CBSA, any of the other combination of the alphabets in the English language that are out here today. I'm sure there's some people here from the various intelligence agencies. This event and other events like this are organized to ensure that you do your job better. In a democracy, the lifeblood of a democracy is engagement, is dissent, is seeking accountability. And that is what these events do. And so please don't leave here after tonight. And I know generally this is what happens, and an event like this takes place, and the next day in law offices across the city, people get calls that CSIS approach individuals because they came here. And that might happen to you. But you shouldn't let that stop you from continuing to engage, because that's our job. In a democracy, we need to ensure that our elected people and our agencies are accountable to us. And some of the other speakers will touch upon some of these things. Why? Because of this lack of accountability, what has happened? I've been asked to give an overview of the whole anti-terror, the war on terror. After 9/11, we've come across this term, and the impact of this war on terror has been profoundly felt by members of the Muslim and Arab communities. And as Dennis asked, where is the Muslim voice? Where is the Canadian voice in this? Why are we silent? We go around exporting around the world that we need democracy, we need human rights, we need to respect dignity. And yet Canada, I'm ashamed to say as a lawyer, I'm deeply ashamed at how Canada has acted in the case of Omar Khadr, how it's acted in a series of legislative and policy changes that have taken place, many of it under the radar. For instance, just this week, or a couple of weeks ago, you had new legislation passed with respect to ID. How many of us were aware of that? That the government has passed legislation basically making it easy for United States Homeland Security to monitor everything you do. Where was the democratic discussion and debate on this? Did we ask our government? No, and this is what we need to think about. Why are we doing this? So I'm going to try to provide an overview, and I ask you to give me a notice at 10 minutes and 5 minutes, and then if there's a police officer, you can use your taser on me when there's 0 minutes left. Maybe you're itching to do that. In terms of the Anti-Terror Act, we have, right after the tragic events of 9/11, the government speedily passed legislation which is critiqued extensively international legal commentators, even our Supreme Court itself has found problems with the Anti-Terror Act. I'm not going to go into the specifics because I have a lot of territory to cover. I want to introduce some of these concepts. The idea here is to get you to look into these further. We can't sit here and do an entire conference on all of these points, but we can try to convey some brief points that you can go further and do some research and get involved and engage and do your responsibility as a citizen. So we have much of this legislation was driven by neoconservatives, by Zionists, and I'm not an anti-Semitic individuals, I said Zionists, and Islamophobia, and pressure from south of the border. That's what shaped this anti-terror legislation. But it wasn't something that came into being right after September 11th. Anybody who knows about legislation knows that you can't just quickly come up with legislation that fast, from September to December. This was in the works much before. In fact, in the 90s, there had been a number of individuals coming from south of the border, coming and meeting with officials in the Canadian government to try to tighten anti-terror laws. Why? And the pitch they were doing is, look, terrorists are going to be targeting us. It's not Israel alone they're targeting. They're going to be targeting you. And they started tightening Muslim charities. And some of us were involved when that started. Okay, it was under the radar, but Muslim charities were being tightened. And I'll get to where it's become even tighter now. So the whole legislation, the definition of terrorism, politically motivated, religiously motivated, it all was well designed to profile against a community, in particular our community. So the definition, secrecy, listing of entities, the government politically, acting on political pressure, can list an entity, and that's happened, and it's happening. And we know that all of this legislation doesn't come into a vacuum. It comes into a situation where critical legal theorists have called, it's a discriminatory state out there. They do target minorities. They do target those from outside the power structure. And so into that context comes, judges are human beings. They know what pressures are out there. They know what fears are out there. And they make their rulings based on that. So we have the Anti-Terror Act. We have something called, for the first time in Canadian history, we had a national security policy. It was called Securing an Open Society. 5 minutes, wow. So I'm going to really run through this. Securing an Open Society, which was tied in to the United States. We have the Smart Border Declaration, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, translation, the No-Fly Act. Translation, when you try to cross the border, how many people have run into difficulties? How many people have lost jobs? It has direct impact on people. Intelligence sharing. We have a gentleman who will be speaking to you about the impact of intelligence sharing with the United States. We see constantly, the last few files we had in our office with intelligence sharing had to do with people going, you think it doesn't affect you? These people went on Hajj with a group of 400 people. 3 of those people in that group, for some reason, were suspected by the US authorities. Because these other people went with the same group, they're all now being interrogated and questioned by CSIS at the bequest of American authorities. So it can impact on you. It's not somebody else.